Have you ever noticed that the most self-reliant people in your office or family are often from Generation X? To understand this radical independence, we have to look back at their childhoods. Born between 1965 and 1980, this generation was defined by a phenomenon known as the latchkey kid. Picture a typical afternoon in 1978. An 8-year-old gets off the school bus, pulls a house key from a shoelace around their neck, and enters an entirely empty home. There were no parents waiting with snacks, no babysitters, and certainly no smartphones to FaceTime a mother for guidance. By 1984, it is estimated that approximately 7 million children between the ages of 5 and 13 were regularly left unsupervised after school. This was not just a few kids, it was a standard for an entire generation. This unique environment did more than just teach them how to make a bowl of cereal. It fundamentally rewired their brains. In what psychologists describe as a high-contingency environment, these children learned that actions and outcomes were directly linked with absolutely no buffer. If they made a mistake, the consequences were immediate and real. There was no Google to search for answers and no way to text for permission. This forced them to internalize a harsh but empowering truth very early in life. Nobody is coming to save you, so you must figure it out yourself. As a result, Gen X developed what many call an eerie ability to anticipate problems long before they occur. They are constantly running mental simulations of every possible scenario, not out of pessimism, but as a survival mechanism honed in those quiet, empty houses. This upbringing instilled a deep-seated value for autonomy and competence. They became the original DIY generation, learning to fix everything from bike chains to television sets with their own hands because calling a technician was rarely an option. They do not seek applause or public credit. They simply show up, solve the problem, and move on. If you are ready to explore the rest of this fascinating psychological profile, please comment 1 to watch the full video and see how these latchkey kids became the bridge of modern history. That radical self-reliance, learned in empty living rooms, soon transformed into a profound skepticism toward the world outside. While they were busy figuring out their own dinners, they were also watching the institutions their parents trusted begin to crumble. This generation witnessed the explosion of divorce rates throughout the 1970s and 1980s, effectively ending the myth of the stable nuclear family. At the same time, they watched their parents give decades of loyalty to corporations only to be rewarded with sudden layoffs during economic downsizings. The lesson was immediate and permanent. The system will betray you, and promises are often worthless. This skepticism was not limited to the home or the office. Gen X came of age during a sequence of massive institutional failures, from the shadow of Watergate and the Iran-Contra affair to the negligent handling of the AIDS crisis and the economic policies that gutted the middle class. These events taught them a hard truth early on. People in charge do not necessarily know what they are doing, and blind obedience is for suckers. Psychologists refer to this outlook as defensive pessimism, but for Gen X, it is simply realistic pattern recognition. They do not just hope for the best, they actively plan for the worst, because their history has shown that the worst-case scenario is a regular visitor. In the modern workplace, this translates into a unique hierarchy of respect. Gen X cares nothing for formal titles or high-level talk that lacks substance. They respect genuine competence and actual skill. If a leader has earned their position through knowledge, Gen X will be the most reliable team members you have. However, if they encounter incompetent authority, they will not stage a loud protest. Instead, they will quietly observe, keep their distance, and focus on making themselves indispensable through their own results. For them, being the most capable person in the room is the only true protection against an unpredictable world. They are the quiet observers who prioritize what you can do over what your business card says. This internal armor does not just apply to people and institutions. It extends to the very digital world they helped build. There is a profound irony in the fact that Generation X created the foundations of the internet. Yet, They maintain the most guarded relationship with digital visibility. While later generations treat social media like a personal stage, Gen X treats it like a surveillance state. They grew up in an era where privacy was the default setting of human existence. When they made mistakes as teenagers, those moments were not recorded, tagged, and archived for eternity. They were witnessed by a few friends and then forgotten. To a Gen Xer, broadcasting your personal life for likes does not feel liberating. It feels exposed and dangerous. Their core philosophy is simple. The less the world knows about you, the safer you are. This preference for the private and the tangible also fundamentally changes how they value information. They remember when knowledge had actual physical weight. Before you could instantly search for an answer on a smartphone, finding information required literal physical labor. It meant traveling to a library, navigating a complex card catalog, and hunting through stacks for one specific book that might hold the answer. Because that information cost time and effort to obtain, their brains learned to hold onto it more permanently. This fostered a unique mechanical intuition that extends to the physical world. If a bike chain slipped or a television screen went fuzzy, they did not call a professional. They became the technician. They flipped the bike over, got grease on their fingers, and figured it out because there was no other option. This history built a resilient belief that with enough patience and the right tool, any physical challenge can be mastered. They are the last generation to truly understand the value of being alone with their thoughts and solving problems without a digital safety net. Check your kitchen drawer right now. If you have a random tool you have not used in 10 years, but refuse to throw away just in case something breaks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That mechanical intuition and the drive to solve problems alone did not just stay in the garage or the library. It moved directly into the professional world, creating a work ethic that is as quiet as it is relentless. Unlike the performative hustle culture often seen today, the professional identity of Generation X was forged through what now seems like prehistoric levels of responsibility. By age 12, many were already managing early morning paper routes or handling cash registers where they had to calculate change mentally when the systems failed. These were not just resume builders. They were raw introductions to the reality of adult labor, where competence was the only currency that mattered. This no-nonsense approach to productivity is also a direct response to a lifetime of economic volatility. Gen X is arguably the most economically traumatized generation in modern history. The oldest members graduated into a harsh recession. The middle group was hammered by the dot-com crash, and the youngest saw their early careers nuked by the 2008 financial crisis. They watched their parents give 30 years of loyalty to a single company only to be rewarded with a pink slip and a handshake during the next downsizing. This taught them a visceral lesson. Company loyalty is a myth, and every job is temporary, because they learned that they cannot control the economy or the whims of a CEO. They focus intensely on the only thing they can control, their own value. They do not post LinkedIn manifestos or seek public applause for their effort. Instead, they strive to be the most competent person in the room, the indispensable worker who is the last one anyone would want to let go. This is also why many Gen Xers maintain multiple income streams. It is not necessarily because they want to be entrepreneurs, but because they have learned that you must diversify or die. They are the coworkers who quietly get everything done without making a noise, driven by the quiet understanding that in a volatile world, your skills are your only true safety net. Beyond the workplace, this emotional armor was forged under the surreal shadow of global uncertainty. Growing up during the height of the Cold War, Gen X children participated in school drills where they were calmly told to duck under plywood desks to survive thermonuclear war. This exposure to a split reality, where total annihilation was a potential reality every Tuesday, taught them to hold contradictions and use irony as a defensive shield. It created a generation that is simultaneously detached and resilient, often preferring to keep an emotional distance because deep attachment feels like a setup for inevitable disappointment. They are the bridge generation, the only ones who truly remember the silence of the analog world, but also possess the technical intuition to build the digital one. As the middle children of history, they often feel invisible. Yet, they are the ones holding the structures of modern society together without expecting a parade. They are the last generation to remember what it means to be truly alone with their thoughts, or to solve a complex problem without a search engine. While their childhood neglect forced them to form deep, loyal bonds with friends who became their surrogate families, it also left them with significant psychological baggage. Because they were raised to handle everything alone since they were 8 years old, many Gen Xers today view asking for help as a fundamental failure or a sign of weakness. They are the first people you want by your side in a crisis, but they are often the last to admit when they are struggling themselves. The ultimate lesson we can learn from Generation X is that true value does not need an audience or social media validation. They teach us that you can be indispensable without being loud, and that competence is its own reward. However, the advice for Gen X is to remember that while you were raised to be a one-person army, vulnerability is not the enemy. You have spent your life holding things together for everyone else, and it is okay to let people in. If you felt seen by this analysis, or if you finally understand the quiet coworker or parent in your life, subscribe to the channel to join us for our next video as we continue to decode the fascinating psychology of the world around us.